This is Ira Gorlick, and this lecture is on the first part of natural monopolies. Natural monopolies are critical for a discussion of net neutrality because it is the foundation for regulation in the belief that telecommunications companies are natural monopolies. So let me just start with some basics. There exists a thing called a natural monopoly. And this is particularly important for our net neutrality discussion because many people consider telecommunications a natural monopoly. And that provides them with the justification to regulate the internet. This is what was used to as justification for the 1934 Telecommunications Act. And we'll talk about more of that in the lectures or in the class on law and regulation. So let me just quote what the economics textbooks say about natural monopolies. Natural monopolies come about due to economies of scale. We're going to talk a lot about economies of scale. When economies of scale are extensive relative to the size of the market, one firm can produce an industry's whole output at a lower unit cost than two or more firms can. Hence the idea of a natural monopoly. The reason is that multiple firms cannot fully exploit these economies of scale. And again, I'm going to go into detail as to why telecommunications works that way. Telecommunications, it is said, is an example of natural monopoly because the economies of scale exist such that another firm that entered would need to duplicate phone lines, whereas if only one firm existed, the duplication would not be necessary. And one firm that serves everyone would have a lower cost per customer than two or more firms. And I use this example all the time because this is what I'm familiar with. At Verizon, we had 100 million customers. So the average cost per bill was lower than if you had a company that had 1,000 customers. So assuming a fixed cost for a billing system, a company with 1 million customers has a lower cost per bill than a company with just 100 customers. Does that make sense? So what we're saying about the phone company is that it's a natural monopoly because a network can better serve a market more than multiple networks because they're just duplicative costs. In the case of natural monopolies, trying to increase competition by encouraging new entrants into the market creates a potential loss of efficiency because you're reducing the economies of scale. And I'm going to explain when I talk about the automotive industry as an example, as something that's not a natural monopoly, and why that is that in any kind of a network business where you have such huge economies of scale, then you have the tendency for a natural monopoly. The efficiency loss to a community would exist if the new entrants had to duplicate all the fixed factors, that is, the infrastructure. Examples of infrastructure include cables and grids for electricity, supply, pipelines for gas and water supply, networks for rail and telecommunications. These costs are also sunk costs, and they deter entry and exit. It may be more optimum for a community to allow only one firm to supply a market because allowing competition would mean a wasteful duplication of services. The key being optimum for the community to allow. So this goes into, is it appropriate for the community to say, okay, what is optimum in terms of a natural monopoly? And I have a bias here that I'm going to get into in a second. So, a natural monopoly is said to exist in any market where the cost of productions are such that it is less expensive for demand to be met by one firm than it would be for that same demand to be met by more than one firm. This would be a good answer to a test question as to what is a natural monopoly. This occurs when, over a sufficiently large range of output, the addition of each new customer lowers the average cost of serving every other customer. So utility companies are usually what we talk about natural monopolies. And they're common in markets for essential services that require expensive infrastructure to deliver the good or service, such as the case of water supply, electricity, and gas, and other industries known as public utilities. Because there is a potential to exploit monopoly power, governments tend to nationalize or heavily regulate these kinds of utilities. In the next lecture, I'm going to talk about a natural monopoly that's a physical, has a physical property to it. I call it physical geography. So hopefully you like these lectures. Thanks.